Let's say you've decided that you need a vehicle that's smaller than an NB Mazda Miata, but somehow still has two back seats. And you've decided that you're tired of modern safety features like airbags and ABS and disc brakes. And you've decided you needed a vehicle that has less body style changes than the Porsche 911. This might be the vehicle for you. Joking aside, your eyes do not deceive you, ladies and gentlemen. This is a real classic Mini, despite its strange cyberpunk purple-colored seats and random Chevrolet steering wheel. Specifically, you're witnessing a 1978 Mini 1000, and to be even more in-depth, this is what is called a Leyland Mini. So, you're probably a bit puzzled by this point, so allow me to take you on a brief history of all things Mini, because these cars are so quirky that every time Doug DeMuro sees one, he sputters uncontrollably into a Super Saiyan. The original Mini was introduced to the world in 1959 and was produced by the British Motor Corporation. The British Motor Corporation had merged the two brands Morris and Austin, so both manufacturers produced Minis, known as the Austin Mini 7 and the Morris Mini Minor. The Mini's original concept began during the fuel shortage in the United Kingdom during 1956, which in turn was caused by the Suez Crisis. This meant that gasoline in the UK was hard to come by due to it being heavily rationed, and British citizens needed a small, affordable, and efficient vehicle to commute. The problem, however, is that other microcars, such as the Iso Rivolta Isetta and the Fiat 500, were starting to rise in sales in the UK. Of course, the British couldn't be outdone by the Italians, so they got to work on making their own microcar. The head of the British Motor Corporation at the time, Leonard Lord, laid down the groundwork, and Alec Isaganis, apologies for butchering that name, got to work on the engineering. The car needed to be small but accommodate at least 4 adults, so the Mini was designed with a transverse front-wheel drive setup to increase interior space. The Mini isn't the first car to use this setup. That title belongs to J.W. Christie's front-wheel drive race car back in 1904, but it did popularize the use of the setup and pave the way for the hot hatches of today, such as the Golf GTI and the Civic Type R. It also had to be inexpensive to produce and inexpensive to buy, so the engine was pulled from the Austin A30. The Mini was a product of its time, so there are basically no safety features, and that meant that with its small size and lack of extra safety equipment, it was light. So light, sturdy, and compact that it wasn't long before enthusiasts began to froth at the mouth of the possibility of performance applications. A man known as John Cooper eventually took notice, and with his involvement, performance variants such as the Mini Cooper S began to make appearances. Finally, the classic Mini was manufactured under many different brands over the roughly 41-year production run, such as Innocenti in Italy, Audi in Spain, and British Leyland. British Leyland produced these cars between 1968 and 1986, and this here is a 78 Mini 1000. It's powered by a 1-liter naturally aspirated inline-4 using a carbureted fuel system. It produces 39 horsepower and 50 foot-pounds of torque, which means that it has a 0 to 60 time of yes and a top speed of we'll get there eventually. It has a curb weight of 616 kilos, which translates to 1,358 pounds. To put that into perspective, a Polaris Slingshot weighs 1,651 pounds. I'd wager that the classic Mini is so light that if you go to a high-end Equinox gym, you'll see Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson using one for his weekly bench press. It's so compact that you can fit it into your coat pocket like Yui in her navigation pixie form. Nevertheless, enough from me. Let's hear from the owner of the car. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the most ridiculous vehicle I've had on the channel so far, and you might recognize a familiar face because my good friend Dan has returned. How is it going?
Yes! It's going all right. You know, I feel like I should have some kind of frequent flyers or rewards program for me or something with how much I've been on here.
V-Dubs rewards.
V-Dubs rewards, there we go. Mozzarella sticks. That's what I need.
The NB Miata.
Yep.
2018 Focus ST.
Yep.
Just recently, Bronco Sasquatch.
Yep.
And now we have this.
Yep.
Which is completely way out of left field.
Yep, exactly.
If you don't mind, how on earth did you get your hands on this car?
So, if you'll remember, way back when, the YouTube audience will remember, but I had a 2004 Mini Cooper S. It was gray with a white roof, super cool car.
That car, yes.
Yeah, super cool car. So I bought it from a family friend, and he also had this car. Well, unfortunately, the Mini Cooper S got totaled, the 2004, and I was left miniless, to say the least. Unfortunately, the previous owner had some health issues, and he sort of let this car sit in his garage for 4 or 5 years. Just sort of left it in pieces. Yeah, and because of his medical issues, his wife said, just get this thing out of the garage, just take it. That's what I did. I got it for a very nice price, but it also wasn't running.
Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because with these old cars, there tends to be a bit of TLC that has to be done before you can actually get them on the road, right?
I mean, a little bit. If this car had been maintained and started,
right.
It wouldn't have been as bad. But this car in particular, the gas cap that was on it was just a plastic gas cap that didn't seal, which let water into the gas tank, fouled all the gas. I tried siphoning all of it out, but there was sediments and particles, and it just clogged up the whole system. But I mean, when I started doing work on this, I had to put a new battery in it, which there was a pretty bad battery acid leak. Put a new battery in it, put new spark plugs in it, and I put, new oil, everything you sort of do to a car that's been, sitting for a little bit. I also siphoned out all the old gas, put a full tank of premium in it, which is 5 gallons. And I tried starting it up, and it wouldn't start up. And I was like, oh, crap. So, unfortunately, right around that time was when I also broke my ankle, and I was out of commission. I couldn't work on this thing, so I had a local shop work on it. They sorted the whole thing out, so now it runs, it drives, it starts, it stops, it does all the above to be a proper motoring car.
Nice. Yeah. I do have to say, it's not every day, especially here in the States, that you see a Leyland Mini.
Yep.
So like most people from like our generation, they hear Mini, they're familiar with, say, like early 2000s when BMW bought them out, starting from there and going forward, right?
Yeah.
I imagine this gets a lot of attention then.
This does get a lot of attention. First, I get the people who look at me and they're like, that's a small car. He's on the wrong side of the car. And then they just look at it and they're like, wow, that's just really weird. And then I have other people who come up to me and they're like, that's a real Mini. And I'm like, yeah, it's a real Mini. And they're like, oh yeah, these new Minis, they're way too big. And I'm like, I completely agree with you. But yeah, this thing gets a lot more attention than any of the other cars I have, especially since it's the slowest car, least practical car, most bouncy. Yeah, it's a trip.
Well, you see, it's the least practical, it's the slowest, but it's also the most raw, I would argue. Yes,
it is absolutely the most raw car. It's, oh man, it's no power steering, four drum brakes, which is some of the sketchiest stuff you'll ever drive if you get to drive one. I have a manual choke on the dashboard. The steering is, it's the most direct.
It's manual steering,
yeah,
right?
Manual steering. It's the most direct you'll ever feel. And it's, it's no fuel injection. No throttle by wire here. Everything is as manual can get.
So I imagine then, like, the hardest part about driving this car then wouldn't actually be sitting on the wrong side, but perhaps the unsynchronized gearbox. What's that like?
Yeah, so I have never, ever driven a car that didn't have synchros in it. And let me tell you what, you don't realize how good we have it until you drive a car that doesn't have any synchros in the transmission. You have to be a lot more precise with your downshifts. You can't just put it in gear and then give it gas and then let out the gas. You have to be in neutral, give it a little bit of gas, have to be like within 500 RPMs of where you need to be and then put it in, or else it'll just grind and grind and grind, and it's not a fun feeling.
It's not giving this idiot in the gray flannel over here a lot of hope for the driving portion.
You'll have a fun time.
Well,
You'll crank out all 39 of those.
Time.
Yeah, you'll crank out all 39 of those horses, and you'll realize what this little British car is all about.
It's only 39 horsepower. It actually doesn't seem like a lot, but the original Minis, were actually very successful in rally racing before the onslaught of Audi Quattro systems and then basically mid-engine cars like Lancia Stratus. That's because this car weighs, what, like 1,400 pounds?
Yeah, I think this car weighs, it's somewhere around 1,400 or 1,500 pounds.
And you look at like the tiny back roads that they do in the rally races, this car could just easily kind of twist itself and rotate through the corners.
Yeah.
So this car does actually have quite a valid and successful racing history.
Yeah, and I mean you can definitely feel it. I mean these tires, they're 10-inch wheels, and these tires are like basically a little bit bigger than a rubber band. And I mean it's amazing. I don't have any grip issues, no nothing.
I was looking at the tires, and I remember you brought it over to the shop that I work at, and you're like, yo, you got some tires for me? And I remember the shop manager, he came out, and he looked, and he's like, that's a negative Ghost Rider, but I will look, and he still has not gotten back to me, so I'm assuming that means he didn't find the tires.
Yeah, me and my dad, we took it over to another tire shop, and they just laughed at me, and they said, my ATV has bigger tires than you. And I was like, yep, that sounds about right.
So, obviously, this is a classic car. It's not necessarily something you'd want to be daily driving anymore. But one of these vehicles, what should they look out for?
I think they should look out for, crap. This is not a really good question because I've literally had this car for less than a year. But I mean, there's some pretty obvious rust spots, like around the headlight housings, underneath.
Okay.
There's a couple other things, but I mean, as long as it runs, stops, starts, I mean, you just take it into the back roads, have a little fun with it, and I mean, I'm not gonna be driving this thing for more than a couple hundred miles a month, anyways. So, if something isn't 100% with it, I'm just gonna enjoy it.
That's fair. I feel like that's kind of with these type of cars. They're just there to be enjoyed, and I think we need to see more cars like these on the road. So to anyone watching, if you have a classic car, you better get it out of the garage.
For sure.
Or else I have a very special set of skills.
Yeah, just about to say, people who let their classic cars sit in there like it's, like it's a stock market, just waiting for the value to climb up, you're really doing a disservice to the people who built the cars.
That's fair. I do have one final question. What do you like the most about this car, and what do you hate the most about it? Error 404, we broke him. We got him, boys, you got him.
So, I mean, the thing that I like most about this car is probably, hands down, its quirkiness.
Yeah.
Needing to pull out a manual choke whenever I started up in the morning. My dad made fun of it. He was like, it's just like my lawnmower. All the quirks you get, with 4 drum brakes, you have to slow down a lot faster. And I mean, you can lock up these brakes a lot easier. The quirks of, having a 1978 gas gauge that doesn't work, and, you run out of gas on the side of the road after picking up some lunch, it's... geez, I mean, I guess all those are just sort of pros and cons. But I mean, honestly, I'm really happy with this car. And I'm a little sad that it might be, the car that I own the least, in the least amount of time, just because some medical bills for my broken ankle. But I'm really hoping that I can keep it just because it's, I mean, this car is coming on to 50 years old. It's a cult classic, you know. Head turns everywhere you go. It's a fun time.
Pull up to the local Cars and Coffee. You're going to be surrounded by people with their exotics, and I guarantee everyone's going to turn and look at this car.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I guess one thing I do hate about this car is the parking brake is shoved in between both of the seats.
Okay.
And since it isn't in plain view,
Okay,
I tend to drive off with the parking brake still up. And my car is just like, what are you doing, dog? But other than that, I mean, you know, no cup holders, but I could always just buy it, set of aftermarket cup holders. Everything works on this car. It's a blast to drive.
All right. With that, let's get her on the road and see how she feels. And with haste, we prepared the equipment to get some rolling shots.
Oh no, it's not. Where is he?
Yeah, where is he?
Giuseppe was coming.
Yeah, where is he though?
みんな見ていてくれ
I've been to the top of Mount Everest. I've sailed the 7 seas. I've shared the stage with all the best. Lot of good it did for me. I've walked the wall of China. Walked till my feet were sore. Came home to Carolina and found my love next door. Well, what do you know? I didn't have to travel the world. Yeah, what do you know? To find a brown-eyed man for a blue-eyed girl. What do you know? Somehow all that I've been longing for was found right here next door to me.
So, the styling. Well, there's not much to say. The pug-like front fascia of the Mini is so iconic that people that don't even want cars to exist know what a Mini is, thanks in part to movies like The Italian Job. If I were to create a list of the most iconic automobile designs, the Mini would easily make the top 10. BMW understood this when they procured the rights to the Mini nameplate, which is why the BMW era Minis of today made few changes to the overall design. If the bright color and go-kart-like proportions don't catch your attention, then the bulbous headlights and megamouth shark-looking grille most definitely will. I like the look of this car. It has character, style, and flair, something that can't be said of most Hollywood NPCs. All in all, I'd love to gawk at the Mini all day, but how about we get to the driving? Yeah, it's going. You don't know what?
There you go.
You need these keys, bro, man.
Okay.
Here's the remote.
All right, sounds good.
Yeah, so I've never been in a right-hand drive car before. And I feel like, I feel like this is not the one you want to learn in.
You know, I learned in it. It isn't that bad.
Yeah, sure about that.
It's not the worst.
Manual windows.
Yeah, manual windows.
Alright, so before we actually drive, it's time to cruise around the parking lot for a minute. Okay, so you said reverse is up, right, down.
Yep, up, right, down.
It's like I'm putting in a cheat code.
Yep.
Oh, and just so you all know, I can't grab it by the shift knob because apparently it'll come right off.
Yeah, you know, the previous owner, he didn't, he thought this was good enough. I don't know if you guys knew this, but this is actually a Chevrolet Mini. But, you know, it's what it is.
Yeah, Chevrolet steering wheel, Chevrolet shift knob.
Yeah.
If you can't sense the sarcasm, then, well, but drum brakes all the way around. This is kind of terrible. Manual steering. So we're just gonna take it around the block for a minute, please.
Yeah, so, you know, as long as you have the, you know, if you have the fundamentals, you know, you're fine.
Wait.
As long as you aren't
That's
wearing,
the wiper.
you know, rims.
Which one is your turns?
This one. Yeah, so you'll know the turn signal's on because that faded green light is on.
Okay,
But yeah,
okay.
so here, hold on, we're gonna have to
Yeah. Yeah?
give it a little bit of gas.
Give it gas.
you're not even up to speed.
I know, already. Drum brakes. Manual steering's not that bad, honestly.
Oh yeah, the car's super light.
Oh yeah, you really have to be hard on these brakes.
Yeah.
Like, very hard. Okay. But yeah, alright, what do you say we actually go on the road now?
Alright, as long as you're confident.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, let's go. Truck coon coming.
Yes, a stop
Ready to
sign.
Isakaios.
Isakaios, let's go for the Leyland Mini.
Alright, Grandma. Give it all she's got.
Alright. That's it?
Yep. You're gonna hit the red limiter. It doesn't have a very high red line.
Come on! Absolutely ridiculous. Alright, yeah. Just so you guys know, my foot was to the floor doing that.
So 0 to 60 and yes. You know,
Yeah.
it has enough torque that if you go down to like 30 miles an hour and floor it, you'll still be fine.
Okay. What did you say is
You're creeping over to
oh yeah, oh that's right.
yeah, just a little bit.
It's a little bit awkward. I gotta get used to the change in perspective because I'm on the wrong side of the car.
Yeah.
So go ahead and fight me, JD and the fan. What's your most favorite part about driving this car?
Honestly, it's
Yeah.
it's probably the absolute lack of power. Surprisingly enough, it's just you have to floor it everywhere you go,
Okay.
and you know, you have a lot of fun with it. Because this car, you know, you're giving it 100% all the time.
Being tailgated by like this Chevy Trax.
Yes, the Chevy Trax.
I'm sorry, Mr. Trax. This is as fast as I can go. You feel like you're going faster than you actually are because of how close to the ground you are.
Yeah.
In that sense, it's almost like being in the Miata just because of the low ground clearance. But,
Yep.
this doesn't ride anything like that. This is terrible in terms of the suspension,
Yeah.
the way the compression works and everything. You're bouncing,
Michelin Man.
yeah, the Michelin Man. You're bouncing all over the place. It's not exactly comfortable. But I will say, it is a lot of fun. It does look like a little bit of an alignment here.
Yeah.
Yeah, going straight in the wheel is like what, 15
Well, I don't think the wheel was put on straight to begin with.
That's fair.
Nope. I have no previous service history except for the oodles amount of money I spent to get this thing running.
So we don't know how well it was kept up.
Well, it was, you know, it's fairly well kept up.
Okay.
The rust situation is honestly not that bad for a car like this.
Slow down and let this truck over.
Yeah, as much as I want to be isekais, I'd be the first to go.
Yeah, to Isekai you into oblivion.
Yeah. But yeah, you know, the only thing I really know about it is now it has an electronic fuel pump. Fuel
Okay.
lines were done. All four of the drum brakes were serviced.
Okay.
You know, but that's all the stuff that was done to it while I've had it.
Okay. I gotta get used to not getting in the middle of the lane here.
Yeah, I mean the thing is that the car is so small that I mean you might even be able to fit like two of these cars side by side and still be in the same lane.
They get like motorcycle riding.
Yeah.
Now, you had the Mini before this one, right?
Yeah, I had the 2004 Mini Cooper S.
Okay. How does that car compare to this one? Yeah, you're going from the BMW era Mini Cooper back to the OG Mini Cooper.
Yeah, I mean that car, you know, it's probably just a product of the era. It's much more refined. You know, I mean, granted it had BMW problems, but you know, I mean that car was much more solid than this.
Okay.
You know, it didn't feel like it was built in a barn.
Wait.
I'm gonna start building Mini Coopers.
So stop building a Mini Cooper, mate. Pop me and my buddies into the car. Make our way over to the pub and grab some points, mate.
Oh yeah.
Let me find somewhere to turn around.
Any one of these places should be good.
See, the problem with the drums is they are terrible at dissipating heat, okay?
Thanks, Manuel.
Yeah. Just put the title in the video, Guy Ruins Classic Mini.
I would.
Yeah, no, we're gonna wait. We don't have any power at all. But yeah, no, it's like direct steering
stuff. They made this car for basically 40 years.
Yeah. And until BMW was like, hey, we want to buy the rights to the Mini name. But I was expecting everything to feel like extremely heavy and tedious. I was expecting to have to mash for the clutch. I was expecting to have to mash for the gas. I do have to mash for the brakes. And then I was expecting the steering to be just heavy because it's got no power steering. But again, it doesn't matter because how light the car is, I guess.
Oh yeah.
So, about how long did it take for the guys at the shop to sort out all the issues before you could actually start driving it?
I dropped it off right around November, December last year, right after I broke my ankle.
Okay.
Because Kyle was moving out of his condo, I didn't have a garage to put it in.
Okay.
So they had it from November until about a couple weeks ago.
Okay.
Yeah, I basically got this thing back the day after Labor Day.
Okay.
So between part sourcing and the guy just taking his time with it, making sure everything works.
Yeah.
He had it for basically 6-7 months.
Okay.
Oh wait, no, my bad. I can math. It's 8 months.
Okay. You know what we need to do? Tim, if you're watching, you gotta come back to Michigan and we gotta see if you can fit in the back.
He might.
Yeah.
It will not be comfortable. It'll be very dangerous because there's no seatbelts.
Oh no, we're talking about Tim here. I think he can handle it. So if you're watching Tim, sorry Rachel, we're gonna steal Tim for a little bit. See if he can fit in the back seats of the Mini. That's all she wrote.
Oh yeah.
I feel like driving this car, it's like that meme, if you've ever seen it, like the Mazda Miata. And the guy's like flooring it, it's like ramps climbing, gears banging, and then like the cops like got the radar gun, he's like, he's only going like 45.
Yeah, I'll let him go.
That's literally driving this car.
Oh yeah.
Obviously, it's not very practical. This is not something you want to drive around every day in.
Oh, absolutely not.
Yeah.
But I mean, for a nice cold day, you don't have to worry about the car overheating.
Yeah.
This car, it's a blast.
But yeah, I mean, like, it's small. Let's be honest, it's cramped. Like, my legs, there's like no space here in the steering wheel or anything. It smells terrible. It smells like a fuel. And
Yeah, fuel and oil. Smells like the 1970s.
Yeah. But this is the sort of experience that car enthusiasts love. This is absolutely awesome.
Oh yeah.
If you have a chance to drive one, do it. If you own one of these, stop keeping it in the garage and drive it, please.
Oh yeah. If you want to give it a shot to downshift, I'll tell you right now, you basically got to be like pretty much close to the top of the rev range at this speed,
Okay.
just to get a feel for this non-synchronized gearbox.
That wasn't too bad, but I did crunch a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit.
A good old synchronized gearbox. We got Nissan fairly easy.
What, behind us?
Yeah, it's a 350Z Purple. He's coming. Yeah, I see him. I was hoping he was gonna drive by. I was like, just be like, you know what, wait. Yeah, let's see what he does. You look at him. He's probably on it. Yeah, he is.
Wonder what, boy?
The driving experience, then. The best way to describe it is raw simplicity. The classic Mini hails from England, and because it had to make do with British B-roads and city driving, it makes sense for it to be this compact. Driving next to the average NPC crossover made me feel as though I were standing next to Anthony Davis, while being tailgated by every single pickup truck in existence made me experience the same terror as the scouts when attempting to flee from the female Titan. It's easy to be paranoid about other drivers not seeing you. If you've ever had the unfortunate task of driving through Bloomfield Hills or Ann Arbor, then you know exactly what I mean. Fortunately, it's a classic Mini, and it gets the attention of every single person within a 200-mile radius. Literally. We had several people want to come and talk about it, both while doing the interview and the driving portion. And frankly, that goes to show the iconic status of this car. So if you're an introvert, you'll probably want to stay out of both the driver and passenger seat. That's assuming you can even fit. Dan and I had the seats in the furthest position possible, and it still appeared as if we had been putting on a contortionist's act. There's nowhere inside to really rest your arms or your left foot when the clutch is not in use, and I imagine that not everyone will have proper headroom. The ride is stiff, so stiff that every time you go over a bump, you regain some of your lost common sense. Not only is it stiff, but it's constantly bouncing in an up and down motion that some might mistake for active hydraulics. The brakes require you to constantly use Schulk's foresightability in order to not crash. You have to dig deep into the pedal, and it's only then that the Mini decides that slowing down might be a good idea. But something sparked while driving this car. This is the most intuitive chassis I've ever had the pleasure of driving. The short wheelbase and low curb weight means that the classic Mini is agile. Seriously, go watch a video of one of these things being raced and you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. Having been behind the wheel of one, here's what I'll say. You can instantly tell which direction the car is facing due to its minuscule size. The rotation speed is all determined by the driver since there is no steering assist, but that doesn't matter because the rack responds as if you're driving a go-kart. That suspension setup may look like the arm of the Michelin Man, but you can easily tell what each individual wheel of the car is doing, and the close spacing of the brake and gas pedal makes practicing your heel toes a breeze, aside from the unsynchronized gearbox, of course. The lack of any sort of computerized nannies waving their fingers in your face means that how the Mini behaves is entirely based on the driver's willingness to push it. In short, this is a driver's car. After driving a classic Mini, it's easy to see why enthusiasts like them, whether they prefer it stock or modified. Speaking of modifications, unfortunately Dan did have to sell this car, but he sold it to a gentleman whom apparently plans on putting a Honda engine in it, although I don't know which one. And that leads us to the topic of buying a classic Mini. So, what should you watch out for? Well, first and foremost, this is an old car that was built in a way so that it could be sold for cheap. Not only is this an old car, but it's an old British car, and old British cars tend to have an issue with rust. And I mean these cars rust everywhere. The rear subframe, the floor pan, the headlight sockets, the lower front bumper, the A panel. Literally, this list goes on for decades. So you need to be doubly sure that if you are considering purchasing a classic Mini, that the rust issues have been sorted. Unless you're handy with metalwork, then of course you might fancy doing it yourself. Also, like most classics, these cars tend to sit for long periods of time, so you'll want to check for fluid leaks, worn gaskets, bushings and weather stripping, dry rutted tires, seized brake components, and the like. Remember, the classic Mini was built for over 40 years, and after doing a quick search, it seems that the average asking price for a classic Mini today is roughly $20,000. You can find these cars for well below $20,000, but we'll also see them sell as high as $50,000. But for a classic, that's actually not terrible. However, remember again that this is a classic, and that means finding parts when needed will be quite the excruciating experience. As a matter of fact, the only thing more excruciating than trying to find classic Mini parts would be listening to music from the Island Boys. For example, when Dan stopped by to see if we had wheels and tires in the size for the classic Mini, we had absolutely nothing available and we couldn't even get our hands on anything. Also, remember that to get this car running, Dan had to take it to somebody that had prior experience working on classic Minis, and I can't imagine that being cheap, so even if you can buy one at a decent price, the upkeep might be costly, and that might be even more costly if you aren't a DIY mechanic. So, would I recommend one? Well, that depends on you as an individual. For the average person that just wants a cool and iconic car, I'd say no, only because there are plenty of other iconic cars that can satisfy that urge without all the fuss of an economy car that was originally conceptualized 64 years ago. This is a car for the person who is ready to accept the gripes and irritants that come with owning a 60-year-old automobile. This is a car for the person that wants to experience a cool piece of automotive history, not for the collector that's looking to fatten the wallet. This is a car for the person that likes to drive, and even a car for the person that likes to build and modify cars for racing. If any of those sound like you, well, what are you waiting for? Right, like look at this. Here's the Mini, and then here's the Corolla.
What was that?
Absolutely ridiculous. Comparing the size, because the Corolla is considered, the Corolla is considered a compact, and then when you line it up with the Mini, oh man, we should have had it.
Oh, that's what do you call it? Baker? No, Navanti.
I missed it.
Correct.
What's going on, y'all? Congratulations, you made it to the end of the video. You know, the usual, like, comment, subscribe if you like it. It really helps out. If you didn't like the video, then I appreciate you putting up with me for this long. I know this was a long video, but if you didn't like it, leave a dislike, tell me what you didn't like about it, and don't subscribe. I know I was trying to do one video a month, but February last month was really irritating to deal with. I was pretty frustrated and angry with some stuff, so I didn't do a lot of editing. But you know what? Got this one out, and frankly speaking, God's good. So, Dan, much appreciated for letting me film your car. I know most people, when it comes to classics, they'll let people touch it with a 10-foot pole, but you pulled through. It's much appreciated. Also, thanks for always helping out with almost every single video. And you know, being behind the scenes, doing camera work and stuff like that, and helping to plan out. And yeah, for providing content, me and the NB Miata, Focus ST, the Bronco Sasquatch, and then a Leyland Mini of all things. So much appreciated to you, man. Hope we can do more content together in the future. Tell your dog Haru to stop being the sussiest of Bakas. And yeah, as far as other content coming, I'll preview the next review in just a second. The Celica is running, so there will be more maintenance videos eventually with what was wrong with it. Like with the starter, for example, it was an electrical issue, not just a bad starter, but we figured it out. But yeah, I'll preview the next car real quick. It's a Roadster, and it's modified, which makes it the third modified car on the channel. And yeah, we'll see you guys in the next one. You guys take it easy. Don't work yourselves too hard.
Take it away, feeling too good to me. Chilling all day, all in your space is where I wanna be. Here in this room, what did you do? I just can't get enough. Too caught up in your love. I've been trying to forget, but you won't let me. Something in my brain wants you. I've been hanging by myself, asking for help, but nothing seems to work on you. Yeah, you always make me
that's really an interesting color. I didn't know it was red.